Ish exposes Joe Budden for pitting his cast against each other.
Joe's playing with our intelligence saying, yo, I'm bringing Mark Lamont up here. You wasn't bringing him here for us. You were bringing him here for you. You said, yo, I'm bringing him up here to give y'all some relief so that each one of y'all could have a day off.
And me. When Mark got here, he was great at his gig.
Amazing.
With everybody that was here.
Amazing. Killed it.
Mm-hmm. So I just kept him.
But if Mark is so great, then when you give Ice a week off the first week, Mark is so great that we're not going to miss Ice. Then when you give Mel a day off the second week, Mark's filling in. So we're not going to miss Mel. Then Ish, then Flip, and go around the board.
And
if that was your premise, and you told me I couldn't get a day off.
That's right. On the last episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Ish led us into what happened behind the scenes when Joe would add Mark Lamont Hill. And Joe even said a bunch of interesting comments, and it was a great episode. I'm not going to hate. This was the best episode I've heard in probably like 7 months of the Joe Budden podcast. And Melissa Ford wasn't there, which is something of note. But anyway, the cast starts talking about the Just Hilarious situation and how people get integrated into shows. And you could tell Joe was talking to his cast through the Just Hilarious Lauren LaRosa Breakfast Club situation. And eventually they start talking about how to integrate people into the show, with Joe finally admitting that the cast, basically Ish, Ice, Flip, did not like that Joe was adding Mark Lamont Hill.
Mark Lamont will be starting sometime soon. The thinking there is to give each of y'all a day off, like per month. That's fly, right? Why y'all don't look as happy as I thought y'all would?
And Joe was engaging in a very calculated narrative because he was positioning it as if all of these guys were bitter, they were mad that he was bringing in Mark Lamont. But Flip and Ish accurately point out that the way Joe integrated Mark Lamont was in a very abrasive way. Basically, Joe had been saying that the cast wasn't giving it up. This is their best. They ain't doing a good job. So yeah, of course, when you say you're bringing on Mark Lamont Hill with that context, people aren't going to enjoy the addition of a new cast member. And Ish also wakes it up by saying that you said you was going to give us days off, and you didn't do that. You said that when Mark Lamont was going to join, I was going to get a day off. But if you notice, it was only Ice, it was only Melissa Ford, and it stopped at Ish. So that shows you how valuable Ish is in Joe's eyes. The show needed Ish, and Joe knows that. And Joe even makes an interesting comment by saying, I thought you guys were giving your all, but then when Mark Lamont got here, I finally saw that you started to give your all. Whoa, buddy. Interesting. For all the talk Joe was saying about he has the best cast in the world, this was before Mark Lamont Hill. Behind the scenes, he was saying, oh, you guys aren't doing a great job. I need to turn it up. Y'all super whack. And that reveals the truth about everything. And with Ish's absence over the last few weeks, you kind of saw that without him, the show doesn't run too well. Ice, Parks, Flip, they're yes men. Sure, they playfully disagree sometimes, but Ish is the only one willingly taking it there. He's not going to let Joe get disrespectful, and that creates an undertone of tension for the pod. When Joe's getting in his disrespectful bag, the listener is like, I want to see how Ish deals with this. I know Ish ain't going to allow that. I know Ish is not. He ain't going to allow Joe to talk to him however he wants. But Ish wasn't the only one to call out Joe Budden for his broadcast tactics, because Ice, shockingly, put Joe on blast by noting how Joe had an opportunity to engage with 50 Cent in a war of words, but he backed down. And it was just saying the quiet part out loud. You got to say the quiet part out loud. So I got to give Ice credit. And Joe looked very uncomfortable. I ain't never seen Joe that humble. He's like, when we talk about 50, I ain't, I could make it so 50 can't see me, I can't, 50 might, I ain't never seen Joe be that humble. It just goes to show you the hypocritical nature of broadcasting, right? Joe is wanting to be in a position where his cast crashes out and he doesn't have to, because he knows the consequences of crashing out. And I think Joe is like, man, y'all don't even know the consequences of crashing out like me, but y'all still ain't crashing out. I need crash outs for my pod. And I think at some point, Joe is going to have to entertain the addition of someone who's reckless, who's going to turn up. And that someone could be Sue Surf, but I don't know if Sue Surf is going to do it, because he might come out a different person. And Joe, much like what happened with Melissa Ford and even Ice, the person you see that you think is going to be great on the pod, they change. You can forecast, you can think, oh man, when Melissa Ford gets here, I know she's going to be the woman voice I need. But then when she actually gets there, she makes the decision to be Barbara Walters. And that messes up your whole plan. And then you're stuck because you can't get rid of Melissa Ford. And that just kind of shows you where everything is at with everybody. And shout out to Ish. He came back. He dropped 30 points. He probably had like 12 shots. Shot 10 to 12 from the field. And then went to the free throw line. Got a couple of assists. Real LeBron James-like game. And he saved the pod. This was the best pod I've heard from the JBP. The best free pod. And I even liked their interview with the Oz dude. Usually I'm down to hate, but I prefer those interviews over those TDE stroke jobs they be doing. I mean, that Absol, that Dochi, it was just a better thing. The guest was engaged. I know a lot of people don't like the interviewee, but that Oz guy, he had the whole audience, well, maybe not the whole audience, the cast, they were all bought in. He was engaging, and that's what you want from a guest. See, these musicians, not all of them, like LL Cool J, great. He knows how to command the audience. But Dochi, Absol, even when they interviewed Melly, oh my God, terrible. And they're just doing favors. And I can't help but think that they're going to start doing more guests finally. And let's hope they pick the right ones. But let me know what you think about Joe being exposed by Ish for creating a toxic work environment in order to, I guess, create better moments for the show. I think it was fascinating, and it revealed real insights into the dynamic of the cast. And I want to close by saying is like, I was reading a book, or I was reading a show, like I was watching a show about SNL, right? Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live, there was a point where it was down. It was doing terrible. And someone came to save it. Eddie Murphy. That's right. Eddie Murphy came in his prime and saved the show. And for Lorne Michaels, the producer of SNL, it messed up the power dynamic, right? You're the big wig. You're the person who runs the show. But the show was on the outs, and then someone comes along and changes everything. They have all the leverage. They're the one who call the shots. This is exactly what I do for the Joe Budden podcast. I like to talk about when power dynamics shift. And I saw a power dynamic shift on the show. Ish is needed. Ishii Murphy. Yeah, you could have Flip. He's great, but it doesn't feel authentic with him. It's all an act. That's not really who Flip is. And you can have Mark Lamont. He has his PhD, sure. But Ish knows Joe. And that's what created one of the best episodes of the post-Rory Ball era. But let me know what you think in the comments. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. Tap in with me on Patreon. The full episode with Rocky Thunder and Shammy and me and Evan is completely there. Like, you gotta tap in with the Patreon. I'm so proud of my Patreon. It's really hard to launch when that thing is like running a YouTube channel, a second one. So tap in, support, $3, and I got more stuff coming soon. All right, y'all, this is Danny from The Stop. Peace.